Luke 19, verse 1. Jesus entered Jericho and made his way through the town. There was a man there named Zacchaeus. He was the chief tax collector in the region, and he had become very rich. He tried to get a look at Jesus, but he was too short to see over the crowd. So he ran ahead and climbed a sycamore fig tree beside the road, for Jesus was going to pass that way. And when Jesus came by, he looked up at Zacchaeus and he called him by name. Zacchaeus, he said, quick, come down. I must be a guest in your home today. Zacchaeus quickly climbed down, took Jesus to his house in great excitement and joy. But the people were displeased. He's gone to be the guest of a notorious sinner, they grumbled. And meanwhile, Zacchaeus stood before the Lord and said, I will give half my wealth to the poor. Lord, if I have cheated people in their taxes, I will give them back 4 times as much. And Jesus responded, salvation has come to this home today, for this man has shown himself to be a true son of Abraham. For the Son of Man came to seek and save those who are lost. Now, this particular passage is incredible. It's wrapped up in God's heartbeat for the lost people. But I want you to catch something maybe from a different vantage point today about Zacchaeus. Zacchaeus had these obstacles to experiencing the hope. You remember at the end of this story, of course, salvation comes to his whole home. But there was an obstacle to that moment happening. His obstacles were the crowd. The crowd was in the way. Now, if you were here last week for Mother's Day, didn't Jody do a great job talking about the crowd and being crowded? I mean, it was... And there were a few drop the mic moments in there that I didn't hear anything in the room, because sometimes conviction comes in when my wife talks. It happens in my house too, by the way. But the size of the crowd was between Zacchaeus and Jesus. And it kept him from getting close. There was a cultural aspect as well to the crowd keeping him from getting close. It just wasn't the number of people. It was also the way that the people viewed him. You see, he was a tax collector, and tax collectors, he was the boss of the tax collectors. He was the crime head. He was the mafia boss. He was the stay away from that guy. He was that hated politician or that millionaire that everybody pickets against. He was the type of person that nobody wanted to be around. And the culture kept him from being near people. He was disconnected, isolated in a way. And I think there was probably a fear about him wanting to go through the crowd. People wouldn't let him get to Jesus. Culture can do that. There are cultural rules that kind of spring up that prevent us from reacting or relating to anybody else or having connection with people. Cultural rules. Think about Minnesota. Minnesota is built on a foundation of Scandinavian settlers. And they brought with them their distinctive Scandinavian cultural rules. Now, I didn't grow up here, but I had to learn the Minnesota rules. There's cultural rules. They're just ways that we relate to each other. And a lot of them are really great things I've learned, you know. We have the best roads. Our roads are kept up. Our cities are mostly clean all the time. It's like IKEA all the time, right? We have things like Minnesota nice. Not sure exactly what that means all the time, but we have it, right? But we also have some cultural rules like we didn't need a social distancing law when COVID broke out. We already had it. People don't hug as much. They don't connect as much. They like to have enough space between them and another person. That's some of our cultural rules. Here's the danger. The danger is, as Christians, is we could keep people out. We'll give people directions to anywhere but our own house. Think about that. We keep people out because of culture, not because of our heart or our mission. The crowd of culture can keep people from receiving the hope of Jesus, even in the church crowd. When we're satisfied with being close to Jesus ourselves and not notice or make room for the people around us who are new, our culture is keeping them from their hope. So he had that obstacle of culture. He also had the obstacle to experiencing the hope of Jesus, the vantage point. It says it in there that Zacchaeus was short. If you grew up in the church world, you might have learned a little song about Zacchaeus. Zacchaeus was a wee little man was he. He climbed up in a sycamore tree for the Lord he wanted. You know? And so we teach our kids these songs. Now, I don't think that we need to think of Zacchaeus as a bad guy or a faulted guy because he was short. Some people are born tall and some people are born short. Some people have great eyesight. Some people don't have great eyesight. I mean, there's all kinds of things physically. Jesus wasn't against, and the writer of the gospel was not trying to note that he was short in some outside. But his shortness, when he tried to see Jesus through the crowd, he couldn't see over the crowd. It's like, can't see it. Can't see him. So what does he do? He has to go up a tree. Now, I want you to consider for all of us, we all have some form of shortness, obstacles between us and God. It's our vantage point. We can't see from where we are, so we got to go up a tree. We got to get into a different vantage point to see Jesus. Sometimes it's our schedules, the busyness of schedule. Zacchaeus, he was a busy man. He was in charge of a lot of employees. He had a lot to do. His schedule prevented him from seeing Jesus. For us, it could be our full calendar. When we spend so much time every day doing so many things, we might not see Jesus or notice the people that are close to us because we're running from thing to thing to thing to thing. That's why in the Old Testament, God instituted a law called the Sabbath. The Sabbath was a day off, not for God, but for people. Because how many know we run ourselves to death? So full, phone is always ringing. Texts are always going. All kinds of stuff are going on all the time, right? Well, think about it. That was an obstacle of a vantage point. If your schedule is so full, you can't see Jesus. And if your schedule is so full and you're so busy, so hurried, you won't notice the people that God brings into your life. Those objects of schedule are a big deal. What about wealth? This man had a lot of wealth, the text says. He had a lot of money. You know, in this modern day and era, inflation is really high and we've got a lot of things going on, but let's be honest. We have more money in this era than we've ever had. There's more things accessible. People can go on vacations, jump on a plane, buy a cabin, get a boat, we've got our phones will pop up, but we sit down and we're like just going, what are we gonna do this summer? I don't know, you wanna go to the lake? Do you wanna go on a trip? Do you wanna go on a cruise or whatever? And 2 seconds later, if you pop up your phone, there'll be a marketing ad to you for that thing. They're listening to you all the time, right? And it can become an obstacle because, listen, we can begin to chase things because we can afford to now and neglect the more important things. It can take over, and before we know it, it's possible that we become servants to the very things we dreamed of owning and having no time for the things that matter. Finally, the obstacle that Zacchaeus had to do with his reputation. He knew in his own head, people don't like me. My reputation is in the way. He had to overcome the shame of his reputation. He had to get to a different vantage point to see Jesus. To get a new perspective, he went up in a tree. I love what Mark Batterson says. He says, a change of place plus a change of pace equals a change of perspective. He had to get to a space where he could see Jesus. I just want to applaud you that you came to church today. Even out of all the busy things going on and all the things you got planned during the day, you are giving yourself a different vantage point, the possibility of seeing Jesus. Bravo. Give yourselves a hand today. Come on. That's one simple step, right? But here's the cool thing. In the middle of a crowd, Jesus sees Zacchaeus. He looks up and he says his name, Zacchaeus, you come down, for I'm going to your house today. I'm going to your house today. He sees him and he notices him. Jesus notices you in the crowd. That's great news. When you look for Jesus, he can see you. Jeremiah 29, verse 12, in those days when you pray, I will listen. If you look for me wholeheartedly, you will what? Find me. I will be found by you, says the Lord. I will be found by you. Now, the very next part of the story is really important because Jesus chooses a type of place for the majority of his life-changing moments. You know, we think of Jesus at the Sermon on the Mount and preaching to the crowd and the times that the crowds are around and Jesus is out in the boat and he's preaching to everybody. But just as many times in the Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, you will see that Jesus isn't preaching to the crowd. He's having a conversation across the table. He would spend time with people in their homes at the table. You see, Zacchaeus got to have Jesus over to his house. And he got to spend time with Jesus in his house.